So here we have a Hello World React application that we're going to be playing around with this, and we would like to be able to access information from a remote data source. Okay? So to do that, um, the way React encourages you to build user interfaces is to build reusable components, right? And that allow you to encapsulate the user interface, the handling of events as user interacts with the user interface, and also interact with remote data sources. So what we like to be able to do is create a component, for instance, that would allow us to interact with this movie OMDB API remotely. Right. So let's create here a component. Maybe create a directory called components, and in there we'll create maybe a component that we might call maybe a movie component or movie search component. Okay. So let's first create a dummy content, the absolute minimum for a component. We'll need to import the React library from React. Right, so anything that uses the React features needs to import the React library, and we'll create a class that will have the same name, the movie search component. It's going to extend right the React dot component. Okay. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, React allows us to use quite a few new features of the JavaScript language, which are not yet available or supported by all browsers. What all these new frameworks do is that they transpile or they compile this high-level JavaScript version, which is not fully supported by all browsers, and they compile down to a more generic, more down-to-earth, more fully supported JavaScript version that all browsers support. Right? For us, that conversion is transparent. We don't have to deal with it. The project, if it's created through Create React App, already includes all the magic that does the conversion between this high-level JavaScript down to a low-level JavaScript. Okay. So here we have a class, and by extending this React.component, we inherit certain features, right? Including the following function, the render function. The render function is implemented by our parent React.component, which the framework knows that it needs to call, whenever it needs to render this particular component, and it will render whatever we say, whatever we return from this render function, right? Whenever we make use of this component, it will iterate over all our components, calling the render function, asking it, well, what do you want to render? So in here, we're just going to say h1. We'll say the movie search component. Yeah, that's all it is. Notice here's also some kind of weird syntax where we are intermixing JavaScript, intermixing it with HTML. Right? That's also a part of a high-level framework that's called JSX that allows us to mix and match two languages without having to concatenate strings and whatnot. Usually, it's a very bad idea to generate one language from another language. Right? It's awful because usually, if you're in Java or you're in a particular language, it's a very bad idea to try and generate XML or try to generate JSON or try to generate anything other than Java, right? Other than any high-level data type in Java, right? Usually because it entails having to concatenate all sorts of strings, right? Just like when we did DAOs, remember? We had to build, SQL strings, and it was very error-prone. Yeah, it even opened us up to SQL injection. Yes. So it's error prone. It's not secure. So usually we avoid generating one language from another language. Usually we want to stay in that language. Okay? And that's the case of Angular. Angular really makes the distinction between these two worlds. Say, no, well, we will have the logic in JavaScript, but we'll have the rendering in HTML. Here, React allows you to mix and match both of them without the downside of having to concatenate anything. It allows you to seamlessly go back and forth between the two languages, which is many folks have found that very appealing. Right? That's one of the appeals of React. All right, so if we want to be able to reuse this component from outside this file, we need to export it. So we're going to export into our default package the movie search component. Now, as anyone can import this component and reuse it. All right, so let's do it. Let's go back to app, and now we can replace our hello here. We can replace it with our component we just created, and we call movie search component. There it is. Notice that it automatically detected my component and imported it for us, right? And it's right here. Right? Notice that this is another appealing thing about React. It allows you to define your own very high-level HTML components, which can then be written in terms of much more down-to-earth or more simpler components. Right? It allows you to create an entire hierarchy of reusable components, which you can put together to build, starting from small components into ever more complex components, and use them as if they were just simple HTML elements, which is pretty cool. You don't like HTML? You can redefine HTML to be whatever you want. Okay, to behave any which way you want. Anyway, so we did that. If we go back, we'll notice that indeed we have the movie search component there. See that? Which is basically the H1 we just defined earlier. Everybody good?